Welcome back. We've just received news about the Chinese military conducting live fire exercises in Tibet amidst the ongoing border dispute with India at the Docklam area in Sikkim. Now, the exact timing of these drills is still unclear, but this weekend's reports are a clear indication of the recent muscle flexing by the Chinese. The People's Liberation Army conducted these live fire exercises to test combat readiness. PLA is one of the two mountain bridges on the Tibetan plateau under the Tibet Military Command of the Western Theatre. This video, in fact, that has been released by the China Central Television. It's the same Western Theatre Command that had conducted an armoured brigade drill at 5,100 metres in Tibet to test combat readiness. The exercise appeared to be different from last month's drills, which showcased PLA's most advanced Type 96 battle tanks. So these are the images that we're showing you right now of the Chinese military conducting live fire exercises in Tibet amidst the ongoing border standoff. Now, there have been a lot of provocatory statements being made from the Chinese side. India really trying to downplay the rhetoric, but China stepping up aggression by releasing aggressive statements and also recently indulging in warmongering. And now comes the visuals of these drills that have been conducted. I'm still awaiting for more details about the latest bit of information and this video that has been now released. We still have no confirmation on the date and the location of where exactly that these drills took place, but one is hearing that these exercises were conducted in Tibet, and these are the visuals of those military drills. Okay, the People's Liberation Army conducting these live fire exercises to test combat readiness, and this is also coming just very recently when there were visuals that were released after a military exercise was conducted at 5,100 meters, also in Tibet, and this was also done apparently to test combat readiness. Comes these latest visuals where these live fire exercises were conducted. Anand Krishnan joined us. Anand, can you just give us more information and details about these visuals of these live fire exercises that were conducted?
That's right, Vandika. It seems another bout of muscle flexing from China. As we reported last week, there were drills that were reported the first week of July as well. So this seems to be stepped up drills, which what they're calling live fire exercises that involved moving troops rapidly to frontier positions. And it also involved the use of howitzers and artillery firing. So it's very clear who the targeted audience is. And Avantika, it's probably just the latest bout of muscle flexing we've seen from China now that the standoff has reached 1 month.
And, you know, the timing of these visuals being released is also something that needs to be questioned, isn't it? We have all those provocative statements coming in from the Chinese stepping up aggression against India. And now suddenly we're getting to see the visuals of all these drills that are being conducted to test their combat readiness.
That's absolutely right. As you said, I think we should see it as part of this campaign. This is probably the most aggressive element of the campaign. Having editorials is one thing, but when you're putting out visuals of artillery firing on the Tibetan plateau, that's taking it to another level. And so it has to be seen in the light of, these string of editorials and statements from the Chinese Foreign Ministry, which says there's no room for dialogue right now. India must withdraw or face the consequences. So this is part of this wider propaganda campaign that we've seen, which has been pretty relentless over the past 2 weeks.
And has there been any official word from the PLA about these live fire drills that were conducted in Tibet? Have they given more details about this?
Commented about what they have said is, as they didn't comment on the latest round of drills, but they did comment on the previous drills in Tibet in early July, which they, of course, said predictably was not aimed at any country and it was part of routine exercises. But the fact that they are publicizing it and the fact that it's the second time around amid the standoff, I think it would be pretty naive for them to not expect it to be seen in the context of the Docklam incident. So it's very clear that they're ratcheting up the public pressure, even as they're maintaining publicly that there's no room for dialogue unless India unconditionally withdraws.
Absolutely. Executive Editor Gaurav Sawant is also with us. Gaurav, just throw some light on, these latest round of visuals that one is getting to see of these live-fire drills that have been conducted by the PLA. Any more details and updates? Any idea as to when exactly were these drills conducted?
So Chinese army carried out a drill early July. Some of these images have just been released. As Anant was rightly pointing out, these are bullying tactics, pressure tactics from China's side. So initially China ratcheted up tension through newspaper editorials, subsequently statements made by diplomats. They were hoping to get some kind of a reaction from India, but India, the very, very measured response, only stated situation on ground and asked China to come to the negotiating table. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's statement in Astana in conversation with President Xi Jinping: differences should not be allowed to become disputes. That's the line that India has been taking all along. But China has, actually painted itself in a corner, and to get out of it, it's now releasing more images, carrying out more belligerent military exercises. Just where are these military exercises being carried out? Those details are not yet out in public domain. But as far as the situation is concerned, India continues to maintain, and that is what sources in the government tell India today, that they hope to resolve this issue only through dialogue, because confrontation helps neither side. How will either side back down now remains to be seen, but both the Indian army and the army of Bhutan on one side and the Chinese army on the other side appear to be in for a long haul. They're digging in their heels, and perhaps it's only when the winter snows come in at the Docklam plateau area will there be a withdrawal, perhaps for both sides to come back the next summer, or a solution to be found midway.
So what exactly, are they doing in these visuals? What are they testing? If you could just throw some light, Gaurav, on the visuals that we're just now showing our viewers. This is coming at a time when there's been an unusual surge of Chinese warship in the Indian Ocean region as well. Now we're getting to see these visuals. What exactly is happening there?
So it's the Chinese army that's using multi-barrel rocket launchers, artillery. They also spoke of using their light battle tanks, 35-ton tanks, live firing exercise, rapid deployment of their forces. And that is something that China has worked extensively on, moving brigades and divisions quickly to the battle area. All of this is being tested. These are drills. The fact that all of this is being publicized is perhaps to intimidate the adversary. But in this case, from what sources tell India today, when you look at the bigger picture, as you rightly pointed out, increased Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean region. But that is where you have India, Japan and United States carrying out a joint military exercise. That does not mean that should push come to shove, either the US or the Japan will fight India's battles. God forbid, if there is a battle, India will have to fight that battle alone. But in this interlinked environment, when economies are so closely linked, when sea lanes of communications have to be kept open, are these just bullying tactics, pressure tactics to see who blinks first? And from what government sources seem to indicate, that India does not intend to blink, at least not this time.
Absolutely. And Anand, that's strange. Why is it? Why is it that they're ramping up the rhetoric when India on its part has had a very measured response? We've had, them trying to downplay the recent conflict and the recent tensions prevailing at the border. Why is it that the Chinese are unnecessarily, engaging in such kind of provocative statements?
Well, Avantika, it seems to be a strategy that they used effectively in some of the other disputes with Japan and the Philippines. But they may have miscalculated, is a reading that we get from Indian officials that we speak to, that perhaps they thought they could do the same with Bhutan and they didn't expect India to intervene. And they were probably caught off guard, and which is why they're trying to ramp up these tactics. But as Gaurav says, the consequence for them is that this could very well end up painting themselves into a corner. And given the fact that China doesn't want to be embarrassed ahead of the PLA's anniversary on August 1st and the Party Congress in November, that's something they have to be very careful about, because it's a double-edged sword. Even as you're publicly ramping up pressure, you could end up looking pretty foolish at home.
But you know, this is coming at a time when Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar recently said that these situations are not new. Differences have been resolved in the past. And the Chinese also, just a few months, in fact, praising India for resolving its differences amicably, and even, you know, hailing the Prime Minister's statement that how things have been dealt with maturely in the past.
No, that's absolutely right. And it was very interesting the way they reacted to Foreign Secretary Jaishankar's comments. They were actually rebuffed him to a certain extent and said, well, he may be right that we've resolved our disputes in the past.
Right.
But the way we look at it, this current issue is very different from those because it's not disputed between India and China. It's a China-Bhutan issue. So they've actually played this current standoff in a very different way. So it remains to be seen whether it can be resolved as the previous ones were resolved as well.
Stay on with me. Sushant Sareen is also joining us for more on this. Sushant, you know, good morning and thanks so much for speaking to us. The standoff, it seems set for the long haul, at least from the Chinese side. Just put things in perspective. What do you make of this sudden surge in Chinese warships in the Indian Ocean and the release of all of these videos of these military drills that the Chinese have been conducting? They say that it's to test their own military might, to test their combat readiness. But what do you make of this?
No, so I think, see, some of it would probably be routine, and that is what armies do, and they, you know, do a force projection of that sort. But of course, you know, in the current context, it can't be all, you know, as innocent as just a routine trial or routine exercises. It is obviously some kind of signaling which is also being done. But I think there are some mixed messages which are also coming from the Chinese side. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but the kind of shrill noises that were coming from the Chinese side, now just yesterday or day before, an article in the Global Times now talks about how China does not need to react to India's rise and how, you know, the two countries can work together. Now, at a time like this, for an article like this to come out in Global Times, maybe it means that some kind of a cooling down is taking place so that, you know, the temperature comes down. And at the same time, you do these exercises and you continue to show, you know, flex your muscle as well, send other signals as well. So I think I would agree with those people who say that this is not going to scale down anytime soon. I think the standoff is likely to remain for some time until matters cool down and calmer heads prevail, and, you know, some kind of a via media can be found out of this.
But there hasn't really been a sharp rebuttal from India's side, at least diplomatically, you know, with S. Jaishankar also saying that issues related to the border differences have been resolved in the past and that this must be approached with strategic maturity. Why is that? And do you think that perhaps would just help in cooling off things or would ultimately resolve the existing row?
I think the Indian position is very clear. We drew a red line, we stuck by it, and we don't think we need to do any grandstanding. So I think the response has been very mature, very measured. And frankly, the Chinese haven't come out looking very good, you know, with the kind of jingoism which they have put up, especially in a relationship with India. And my fear really is that even when this particular matter, you know, starts cooling off, the kind of rhetoric which has come from the Chinese side, including from officials, you know, has put in a deep cleavage in the India-China relationship, and the kind of normalization that everybody was looking forward to, the kind of cooperative relationship, would have suffered, because after all, when, you know, you start publishing articles, and the Chinese media is not free by any stretch of imagination. So these are planted articles, and when you start putting in articles that we can sever the northeast from India, that we can interfere in Kashmir, and, you know, all sorts of other stuff which they've been talking about. Now, clearly, this is not something which is likely to go down well in India, and whatever suspicions there were of the Chinese intentions in the past are only going to increase right now. So while it does not serve India's interest to enter into a conflict with China, but I don't think it is also an option for India to allow itself to be pushed around. And what the Chinese have done, and people who have been singing paeans about the Chinese diplomacy and wisdom, I think really need to look at this particular episode to realize that much of what they've been saying about the Chinese.
But why Sushant, has the situation this time around, the escalation, why has it accelerated? Why things have not been able to be resolved diplomatically?
I think it has something to do with certain differences which have been emerging in the recent past, whether it is on OBOR, whether it is on, India's reservations on the CPEC, Masood Azhar, NSG, you name it. There have been a number of issues that have been coming up. So there has been some kind of, differences which have been mounting. But more than that, I would imagine that it's the arrogance of power which the Chinese have. We are seeing that in South China Sea. We are seeing that in the way they've been bullying and trying to blackmail and buy over also some of these smaller neighbors. And perhaps it was also on the Chinese side, maybe the unexpectedness of the Indian move, the shock which comes that, even when the Americans seem to be kowtowing to the Chinese, here are the Indians who are taking a bit of a position. So maybe it was a combination of factors. I don't think it is in China's interest. I don't know, I might be entirely wrong on that, but I don't see how China's interest is going to be served by entering into a conflictual relationship with India. And it certainly does not, serve India's interest to enter into a conflictual relationship with China. But, like I said earlier, for us to, simply roll over and play dead to Chinese provocations is really not an option.
Right, Sushant, thanks so much for joining us. Rajeshwari Rajgopalan, foreign affairs expert, is also with us right now on the broadcast. You're reading into the visuals that we're showing our viewers of these live fire drills that have been conducted by the Chinese side. It's coming at a time when there is, at present tension at the border between both the sides. What do you make of this?
Clearly, I think the Chinese are upping the ante in a sense and trying to show their military strength, which has been in display for a very long time. It's nothing new in that sense, whether it's the China-Russia military exercise along with the Central Asian countries.
That's a very important point, Rajeshwari. If I may just interrupt you, you say that there is nothing new about this kind of, this kind of aggression, this kind of military tactics and muscle flexing. But what do you think in this present scenario has changed in the relationship between the two nations? Why have things gone on to such a level, and why have they not been resolved diplomatically?
I think there are a couple of different reasons, and I think your previous speaker also alluded to some of those things.
Yes.
In a sense, I think this tension in the relationship has been building up for a while. But I think you can name energy, you can name Masood Azhar, you can name a number of different issues, whether how India has reacted to the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, or the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. But my sense is that this is all essentially symptoms of the larger problem that exists between India and China. And the larger problem that exists between India and China is the question whether China can live with a rising India at the same time. Even a marginal increase in India's influence is seen to be a sort of a competition from the Chinese perspective. So China does not want to see another peer competitor emerging. Even if it's a marginal rise, they don't want to share that Asian strategic space with other country. Similar is the case with Japan, for instance. A new normal Japan, which is defending its own security interests and kind of things. Again, China is very, very skeptical of a Japan that is rising and India that is rising in a sense. So China believes that its rise is a very natural phenomena, and it does not want to be to share that same strategic space with anybody else. That's about it. So at the global level, well, China would like a multilateral kind of multilateralism and kind of things until such time that China becomes the number one position, preponderant power. But until then, they would talk about multipolarity. But at the regional level, China would always want to see a hegemonic power under its leadership, and the rest everybody should fall into place. I think that's the broad viewpoint that China has in a sense.
Okay, ma'am, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll continue to get you more reactions on this latest bit of news and the visuals coming in of these live wire drills that were conducted by the Chinese army. But for now...